A quiet black teenager steps into Westbrook High, a school where the privileged reign and outsiders know their place. He plans to keep a low profile, get through the year, and stay unnoticed. But the school's golden boy, the leader of a group that thrives on bullying, has other plans. The teasing begins subtly, followed by shoves and then public humiliation. When things escalate, he fights back, but not with violence, with his mind. By the time he's done, it's them who are left shattered, filled with regret. What about you? How was your high school experience? Before we dive into the story, share your own thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Zane Mitchell stepped off the bus, the heat of the Georgia sun pressing down on him like a heavy hand. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass, pavement baked by the late summer heat, and faint traces of cologne and perfume as groups of students moved around him, laughing, talking, already settled into their routine. Westbrook High School loomed ahead, a massive red brick building with tall windows reflecting the bright sky. A pristine, well-manicured campus stretched around it, the kind of place that screamed old money and deep roots. This wasn't just a school, it was a legacy, a carefully curated bubble where the children of doctors, lawyers, and CEOs spent 4 years preparing to take over the world. Zane could already feel the eyes on him. He wasn't new to this. The stares, the hushed whispers, the way people tried to figure him out before he even opened his mouth. It was the same every time he transferred to a new school, people slotting him into a stereotype before they even knew his name. Was he an athlete, a troublemaker? Did he live in the wrong part of town? Did he have a single mom working 2 jobs? They wouldn't ask, of course. They never did. They just assumed. Tightening the straps of his backpack, Zane kept walking, his expression unreadable. He had learned early on that showing too much gave people something to hold against you, so he kept his face neutral, his shoulders relaxed, not too confident, not too defensive, just enough to blend in. Except blending in wasn't exactly an option when you were one of the only black kids in a school like this. Inside, the hallways buzzed with energy, lockers slamming, laughter echoing, sneakers squeaking against the polished tile floors. The air smelled like cheap cafeteria food and expensive perfume, a mix of the mundane and the elite. Zane scanned the crowd, already mapping out the battlefield. Cheerleaders grouped together near the lockers, effortlessly radiant in their matching skirts and perfectly done hair. The rich kids lounged by the entrance to the senior hallway, designer backpacks slung over their shoulders, talking about ski trips and beach houses. The honor students huddled near the library doors, already debating something too advanced for a regular conversation at 8 a.m. And then there were the jocks. They were impossible to miss. Louder than anyone else, bigger than anyone else, moving through the hallway like they owned it. And maybe they did. At the center of them stood Tyler Brooks. Zane didn't need an introduction to know who he was. Tyler had the kind of presence that sucked the oxygen out of a room. Tall, broad shoulders, perfect blonde hair styled effortlessly messy, and an expression that oozed self-satisfaction. He wasn't just some popular guy, he was the guy. Tyler leaned against a row of lockers, a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth as his friends laughed a little too hard at whatever he had just said. Even from across the hallway, Zane could see it, that aura of control. He had seen guys like Tyler before, the kind who never had to ask for respect because it was given to them by default, the kind who thrived on power, not because they deserved it, but because they had been raised to believe it was theirs by birthright. Zane exhaled slowly, adjusting his backpack strap. Guys like Tyler were predictable. They were powerful, yes, but only because people let them be. Still, Zane had no intention of being noticed. If he was lucky, Tyler would ignore him, and he could get through the year without any unnecessary drama. Fate had other ideas. Just as he passed by, a sharp shove hit his shoulder. Just enough force to make him stumble, but not enough to send him crashing to the ground. His textbook slipped from his grasp, hitting the floor with a heavy thud. For a moment, the hallway seemed to hush, not completely silent, but just enough for people nearby to notice. A few heads turned, a few whispers started. Zane exhaled slowly, already knowing exactly who was behind him. "Watch it," a voice drawled lazily. Zane didn't have to look up. He already knew the smirk that came with those words. Tyler Brooks. He stood over Zane, arms crossed over his Letterman jacket, that infuriatingly casual smirk still tugging at his lips. Behind him, a group of guys, all football players, chuckled on cue like they had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. Well, well, Tyler said, tilting his head like he was studying a strange new species. Didn't know we had a transfer. You lost, boy. Boy! The word hit like a slap. Zane's jaw clenched, his grip tightening around the strap of his backpack. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't casual. It was deliberate. He bent down, fingers brushing against the cool tile floor as he picked up his book. He moved slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. He could feel Tyler watching, waiting for a reaction. Zane straightened, eyes meeting Tyler's. His expression stayed neutral, unreadable. I'm good, he said evenly. No problems here. Tyler raised an eyebrow. Oh, we got a quiet one. What's your name, new guy? Zane held his gaze. Zane. Tyler smirked. Joni what? Zane Mitchell? Tyler's eyes flickered with something. Recognition, amusement, before he exchanged a look with his friends. One of them, a stocky linebacker named Ben, let out a low chuckle. Aha, Tyler said, like he was turning the name over in his head, trying to fit it into whatever box he had already made for Zane. Then his smirk widened. Mitchell, let me guess, single mom? Moved here for a better life? Or was it getting away from trouble? The words were a knife, sharp and precise. Zane inhaled slowly, controlling the sudden heat in his chest. He had heard it all before. The assumptions, the stereotypes, the backhanded insults wrapped in mock curiosity. He didn't take the bait. Tyler waited, like a predator, seeing if its prey would run. When Zane didn't respond, he leaned in slightly. You play ball, Mitchell? Football? Basketball? Or are you one of those track kids? Zane finally spoke, voice calm, steady. I don't play anything. Something flickered across Tyler's face, a break in the script, like he had expected a different answer. No sports? Tyler repeated. Thought all of you. He stopped just short of saying it, but the implication hung heavy in the air. His friends chuckled under their breath. Zane exhaled sharply through his nose. He had played this game before. The best way to win was not to play at all. Without another word, he brushed past Tyler, walking away like he wasn't worth his time, like none of this mattered. But Tyler Brooks wasn't the kind of guy who liked being ignored. And as Zane walked away, he could feel it. The weight of Tyler's gaze, the silent promise that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The cafeteria at Westbrook High was a battlefield of its own. The long tables were unofficially divided, the jocks in the center ruling over the room like self-proclaimed royalty. The cheerleaders beside them, effortlessly perfect in their carefully curated social bubbles. The honor students clustered near the back, half eating, half studying, and then the nobodies, the ones who didn't fit, scattered along the edges like afterthoughts. Zane walked in, tray balanced in one hand, eyes scanning the room. He already knew where he wasn't welcome. He had no intention of stepping into the wrong territory. Blending in was the goal. But Tyler Brooks had other plans. The second Zane stepped past the jocks table, a sudden impact against his shoulder sent him off balance. It wasn't enough to knock him over, just enough to make his tray lurch forward. The lukewarm spaghetti sauce sloshing over the edge of the plate, dripping onto the floor. Laughter erupted from Tyler's table. Zane inhaled slowly, his grip tightening around the tray. He knew this routine. Push the new guy, get him mad, make him lash out, so you can call him the problem. He wasn't falling for it. Damn, Kata, a voice drawled. Ben, stocky, built like a brick wall, sitting with one arm draped over the back of his chair like he owned the place. Didn't see you there? You moved real quiet. More laughter. Someone muttered something under their breath, low enough that Zane couldn't catch it. But the chuckles that followed told him all he needed to know. He exhaled, setting his tray down on an empty table, pulling a napkin from the dispenser to wipe his hands. He didn't give them a reaction, just cleaned himself up and sat down. That alone seemed to piss Tyler off. Man, you're real polite, Tyler called, amusement laced with something sharper. That's good. You gotta be polite when you're in someone else's house. Zane didn't look up. He refused to play their game. But he could feel it. The shift. The students sitting nearby weren't laughing. Some were watching in awkward silence. Others were pretending not to hear. This wasn't just teasing anymore. It was something uglier. And Tyler, he thrived off that silence. Zane finally lifted his gaze, meeting Tyler's across the cafeteria. He didn't glare. He didn't scowl. He just looked. For a second, just a second, something flickered in Tyler's expression. Annoyance, frustration, like he knew he was supposed to be in control of this moment. But somehow, Zane wasn't letting him have it. Then Tyler scoffed, rolling his eyes, leaning back in his chair like he was already bored. Man, whatever. He muttered more to his friends than to Zane. Ain't even worth it. Zane went back to eating. His hands didn't shake. His face stayed neutral. But inside, he could still feel the heat in his chest, that low, simmering anger he had swallowed too many times before. He knew Tyler wasn't done. People like him never were, and Zane wasn't stupid enough to believe this would be the last time. Zane knew it was coming. He had felt at the moment he refused to react in the cafeteria. Tyler wasn't the kind of guy to let things go. Guys like him, spoiled, entitled, too used to winning, didn't know how to handle being ignored. So when he walked into school the next morning and saw his locker, he wasn't surprised. The metal door was covered in thick black marker. Slurs, insults, words meant to cut deep. Thug, charity case, go back where you came from. A crude drawing of a basketball next to his name, as if that's all he was supposed to be. The message was clear. You don't belong here. Zane stopped staring at it, forcing himself to stay still, to breathe. He could feel the eyes on him. A few students lingered nearby, pretending not to stare, but watching anyway, waiting for his reaction, waiting to see if he would break. A short, sharp laugh came from down the hall. Tyler? He was leaning against the lockers with Ben and a few other football players, arms crossed, that smirk still plastered across his face, like he was waiting for something, for Zane to snap, to lash out, to give him exactly what he wanted. Donnie exhaled through his nose, slow and steady. He didn't move right away. Instead, he let the silence stretch, let the tension build. Then without a word, he reached into his backpack, pulled out a roll of paper towels and a bottle of water, and started wiping the marker off. The smirk on Tyler's face twitched, just for a second, a flicker of something close to frustration. Zane worked methodically, like he was scrubbing a stain off a desk instead of wiping away an attack meant to humiliate him. His movements were slow, deliberate, dismissive, like it didn't matter. And that glint more than anything seemed to piss him off. Ben shifted uncomfortably beside him. Some of the other football players were glancing away now, suddenly fascinated by their phones or the floor. The hallway wasn't laughing this time. Tyler pushed off the lockers, his jaw tightening. Damn, Mitchell, you really gonna act like that ain't even bother you? Zane didn't look up, didn't acknowledge him at all, just kept cleaning. Tyler scoffed, louder now, voice sharp. Man, you must be real used to this kind of thing, huh? That hit harder than it should have. Zane's hand stilled for half a second, the water bottle pausing mid-squeeze. But then he blinked, set his jaw, and kept going. He wouldn't give Tyler the satisfaction. Another chuckle, but it wasn't as confident this time. Tyler was waiting for something, some sign that he still had control over the situation. Zane finished, capped the water bottle, tossed the ruined paper towels into the trash, and shut his locker with a sharp final clang. Then finally he turned to Tyler, and he smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just the barest curve of his lips. Cold, unimpressed, a silent challenge. The kind of smile that said, "That was your best shot." Tyler's smirk faltered. His fingers curled slightly at his sides, his shoulders stiffening, before he forced himself to relax. Zane slung his backpack over one shoulder and walked past him, not breaking eye contact until the last second. Tyler didn't stop him, didn't say another word. But Zane knew. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Zane had seen it before. The shift. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable. But once it started, it spread like cracks in glass. Small at first, then unstoppable. Tyler still walked the halls like he owned them. still held court at the center of every conversation, still laughed like nothing had changed. But something had, and Zane saw it in the details. The way his friends hesitated before laughing at his jokes, their eyes darting to each other as if silently questioning whether they should. The way people no longer leaned in when he spoke, the effortless control he had over them, slipping, unraveling, and Ben. Ben was the biggest tell. It was during lunch when Zane noticed it. Tyler was holding court at his usual table, talking loudly about the game that Friday, recounting a play as if it were some legendary battle. The usual crowd sat around him, nodding, agreeing, laughing at the right moments. But Ben was distracted. He wasn't locked into Tyler's performance the way he usually was. His fingers drummed idly against the table, his eyes flicking toward Zane, then away, like he was working something out in his head. Zane didn't smile, didn't react. He just waited. People like Tyler didn't lose power all at once. It happened in pieces, and Zane was patient. Later that day, he found Ben alone near the vending machines, his massive frame leaning against the wall, scrolling mindlessly through his phone. The hallway was quiet, the last few stragglers rushing to class. Zane stopped beside him, casual, nonchalant, like this was just coincidence. Ben glanced up, startled at first, then guarded. "What's up?" Zane said easily, pulling out $1 and sliding it into the vending machine slot. Ben shrugged, looking back at his phone. Not much. Zane pressed a button. A bag of chips dropped to the bottom. He didn't reach for it immediately. Instead, he turned slightly, studying Ben the way Ben had been studying him. "You ever get tired of it?" Zane asked. Ben frowned, glancing at him. "Tired of what?" Zane gestured vaguely. "The whole performance." Ben stiffened. "Ain't no performance, man." Zane let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "Sure." Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but weighted. Ben shifted his stance, adjusting his grip on his phone, suddenly interested in the floor. "I get it," Zane said finally, his voice even. "You don't want to be on the outside. You don't want to be the one people turn on." He reached down, grabbed the bag of chips, and crumpled it slightly in his hand. "But you see what's happening, right?" Ben didn't answer. Zane stepped back, tossing the chips in his backpack. "You think Tyler would do the same for you?" Ben's jaw clenched. Zane let the question hang there for a second longer, then turned, walking away. He didn't need to hear an answer. He had already planted the seed. Zane didn't have to wait long. By the next morning, the school was buzzing, not with whispers this time, with full-blown, wide-eyed, phone in hand, "Can you believe this?" murmurs that spread through the halls like wildfire. It was the kind of energy that told Zane something big had happened, before he even knew what it was. And then he saw it. The lockers near the front of the school, Tyler's locker, were covered in paper. Pages upon pages, taped up in a haphazard mess, some crumpled, some clean, but all of them damning. Screenshots, texts, private messages. Zane slowed his pace, adjusting the strap of his backpack, his face unreadable. He had known Tyler would dig his own grave eventually. All he had to do was give him the shovel. Now it was on full display for everyone to see. Some messages were just petty. Tyler talking trash about his own teammates, calling them useless, taking credit for plays that weren't his. Others were worse. Racist jokes in group chats, sexist comments about girls he had hooked up with, cruel insults about kids he pretended to be friends with. But the worst ones? The ones that made people stop in their tracks and look at him differently? The ones about his so-called friends? Ben. Zane's gaze flickered toward him, standing just a few feet away. His eyes locked onto the messages. His jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. His name was there too, printed in bold letters next to text that made it painfully clear Tyler never respected him, never saw him as anything more than a useful idiot. The hallway felt thick with something unspoken. Tyler shoved through the crowd, face pale, movements frantic. His eyes scanned the papers, hands shaking as he ripped them down one by one, his breath coming short. "What the hell is this?" His voice wasn't the usual cocky drawl. It was sharp, panicked. He turned, looking around like a trapped animal. Who did this? No one answered. because there was no one left on his side. Ben didn't move, didn't look at him. The rest of the football team stood back, watching but not interfering. The girls, who usually clung to Tyler like trophies, stood at a distance, their faces unreadable. Zane leaned casually against a locker, arms crossed, expression calm. He didn't have to say anything. Tyler already knew. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Tyler didn't smirk, didn't try to play it off. He saw it now. The shift. The cracks had turned into a full collapse, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Zane tilted his head slightly, voice quiet, when he finally spoke. "This is who you are, Tyler. The only difference is now." He let the words hang, watching as the reality sank in. Now everyone else sees it too. And Tyler, for the first time in his life, had nothing to say. Tyler stood frozen in front of his locker, fists clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. His breathing was sharp, uneven, his chest rising and falling too fast as his gaze flickered over the pages still taped to the metal. He looked like a man watching his empire burn. And in a way he was. The hallway was thick with silence, the kind that pressed down on everything like a slow-building storm. No one rushed to help him. No one tore down the evidence in his defense. His friends, his so-called kingdom, stood at a distance, unwilling to go down with him. Ben was the first to break away. His face was hard, unreadable, but his body language said everything. The way his shoulders squared, the way his hands flexed at his sides, the way he didn't even glance at Tyler as he turned and walked away. A slow ripple followed. One by one, the crowd lost interest. People whispering, shaking their heads, shoving phones back into their pockets as they drifted off. No grand explosion, no dramatic fight, just quiet rejection. That was how it always happened. People like Tyler didn't fall with fire and fury. They fell with silence. Zane watched as Tyler turned toward him, expression twisted, something like rage barely contained beneath the surface. But it wasn't just anger. It was fear. The realization that he wasn't in control anymore. That for the first time, no one was looking to him for what to do next. "This was you," Tyler said, voice low, shaking. Zane didn't answer right away. He let the words settle, let Tyler feel the weight of them, then tilted his head slightly, eyes steady. "I didn't write those messages." His voice was calm even, but there was an edge to it, sharp enough to cut. "You did." Tyler's nostrils flared. His hands twitched at his sides, like he was on the verge of doing something, of lashing out just to prove he still had some kind of power left. But he didn't move, because he knew. If he threw the first punch now, it wouldn't make him look strong. It would make him look desperate. Zane held his gaze for a second longer, then turned and walked away. He didn't need to stay and watch the rest. He already knew how it would play out. By the end of the day, Tyler's name would be dragged through every group chat, whispered in every hallway. Teachers would be forced to acknowledge the problem they had ignored for too long. His reputation, the thing he had built his entire identity around, was already crumbling beneath his feet, and there was no rebuilding it. When Zane stepped outside, the late afternoon air felt lighter. The heat still clung to his skin, but the pressure, the constant, unspoken tension he had carried since walking into Westbrook High, had finally lifted. A familiar car was waiting at the curb, engine rumbling low. Marcus Mitchell leaned against the hood, arms crossed, watching with that knowing look that meant he had already heard. Zane slid into the passenger seat, exhaling as he let his head rest back against the seat. Marcus raised an eyebrow, shifting the car into gear. "Done," Zane nodded. "Done." Marcus smirked, pulling away from the school. Didn't even have to throw a punch. Zane let out a breath of a laugh, shaking his head. Didn't need to. The car rumbled down the road, the sun casting long shadows over the pavement, the weight of the past few weeks finally falling away. He had won, not by being louder, not by being stronger, but by being smarter, by being patient, by letting Tyler bend himself. And as for Tyler Brooks, he was just another lesson, a reminder that power built on fear never lasts, and that sometimes the quiet ones are the ones you should fear the most. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.